All right. Can you guys see me? Are we live? Yes. Okay. We did it. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. We are here. Okay, camera focus. I hope, can you guys see a difference? Does it look better? Does it look better? I hope so. I changed. Now it looks like I'm actually looking at the chat because you guys are, you're actually here to me. Like, it's confusing, but everything's flipped around. But it should look like I'm actually looking at the chat now because of the way that the camera is, which is over here. So I hope you guys can see it. Hi. I hope that it, I don't know how good YouTube is at streaming stuff, but I hope that the quality of it looks better. I changed a lot of settings on my camera and then on OBS, so hopefully it should look like better than potato quality, because I am actually using a good camera, I promise. All right, can you guys hear me okay? I'm assuming you guys can. I haven't heard anything to the contrary yet. The very last second, my microphone was not correct. It was not selected in the appropriate manner, but I will have you all know I started streaming when it was still 6 o'clock. So there you go. This camera is capable of 4K, and I have it currently set to 4K 30 frames per second. And as long as YouTube is not downgrading me, I think I have all of the appropriate things set up for this to be a 4K stream. So yay! I thought I had it set to higher quality, but I spent a couple hours looking at all of my settings and just... I explained this on my stream for Patreon last night, but it's like everything has to be like, it's all pipes, and all the pipes have to be lined up. Do. And if they're not all in the exact same spot, the output is not going to be the quality you want. It's going to be potato. So, like, I can have it in the camera settings, and then in OBS, which is what I use to stream, and then also in YouTube, and then within OBS, I have to have like the bitrate and the keyframes and the resolution and the image quality and the output and the video. Like, it's a lot. So, yes. I looked bad for a bit, but that was YouTube auto setting. Okay, yes. So if you guys have the ability, YouTube basically, it will auto, if you don't know this, YouTube, because honestly, YouTube is like the best streaming platform, like, sorry, Twitch, but especially when it comes to bitrate and like the actual video quality, especially if you're not like a Twitch partner. If you want to make sure you're getting like the proper stream quality, YouTube will automatically detect, I think they go through your internet connection settings, and or not settings, but like the quality of your internet connection, and typically it will downgrade it and streams will be like 720 480p, but you can manually pick it and have it go to a higher setting. So if you want to see my face in HD for some reason, that's an option for you. I got my hair cut finally. I haven't had my hair cut in forever. I have bangs again now. Look at this. Wow, my hair is cooperating with me again. Haven't dyed it again yet, but we're getting there. It's just like, I always dye my hair at night, and sometimes I just have trouble at night being like properly motivated to dye it when I'm like, but I could do literally anything other than sitting in my bathroom for 2 hours and doing this, so I'm not going to. Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Friday. I hope that you guys like the new layout, and hopefully the stream quality looks better. I don't know. I'm excited about it. I love all of the early people. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, so for the topics for today, let's just talk about what's in the title. So there's a couple things that have been on my mind. I'm like in the mode that I get in when I have a million things that I want to write about. I'm trying to get through all of the current Marilyn Manson updates because that's like the most pressing, but there's so much I want to write about, and there's a really big news story that came out involving OnlyFans that I thought we could talk about. There was also actually, it wasn't a news article, but it was a research paper that somebody was reviewing on Twitter, and I had some thoughts and opinions about it as it relates to choking, because a while ago we did a video on the choking epidemic, and I thought we should follow up on that because I just find choking to be like a really interesting, very unique, like, kink thing, and like the way it interacts in vanilla culture is so interesting. So yeah, and then just we had a really good you know, lots of questions last week about just getting into BDSM in general, getting started in kink, and I wanted to just kind of follow up on that because I know I did not get to everyone's questions last time, so I wanted to make sure that I got there for everyone. And yeah, I think the stream health looks good. I don't want to, it's kind of like waiting to see how the stream went a little bit before we got into anything, because when I was testing earlier, I did have some issues with the bitrate getting way too high and like YouTube not being able to handle all of this quality, and then it would just buffer the stream down like this. It would go on the stream. So yeah, it is. I have to keep like readjusting where I look because I keep forgetting that the chat is in a completely different spot now from where it normally is for me. So whoops. So yes, it is subscriber only mode. FYI, we do have mods in the chat, so you know, they're here to help out. So before we get into it, as some key reminders here today. One, this is an 18 plus only stream, so if you're not at least 18, please do not be here. That is because we talk about mostly adult related topics and things like BDSM, kink, polyamory, etc. And so because of that, don't really want to mix minors and adults having conversations about that. There are age-appropriate resources that you can go to for information about that. As someone that is younger, you can go to Scarletine. There are people that are more trained professionals that can help you if you are exploring something, or if you have like an unwanted fetish or unwanted sexual desire. There are professionals that can help you. I cannot. I am not a professional. So that's the important part. Please read the rules and FAQ below. It is very helpful. We just have some core guidelines because YouTube does not allow us to talk about literally everything we want. We do have some parameters here. And also, I just have my own limitations. Again, I'm not a professional. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a personal coach. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not any of those things, and I don't claim to be. And so if you have questions related to things like, help, I think the medication I'm taking is ruining my sex drive, or I did an impact play scene and now I think this bruise is infected, what do I do? Like, I'm not going to be able to help you with that. I'm going to tell you to go to a professional resource. I also did update the FAQ last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago at this point, and so all of the questions and answers in there are spruced up to date, fully fleshed out, new links to everything. Everything should be working in there, so, you know, check it out. It's if you have questions that are related to more introductory BDSM things like where do I buy a flogger, how can I tell my boyfriend or girlfriend I want to try BDSM, those kinds of things are generally in there. Now, final random update is, look at this. One, it matches the color of my live stream. Isn't that so cute? I have a big water bottle because one of my personal New Year's resolutions was to drink more water, and now I have this giant thing. So meet the water bottle. It's going to be on our stream, I'm sure, a lot. I actually really like this. I've been using it for 3 days. I'm on day 3 right now, and I really struggle with dehydration. I know I'm completely derailing any important questions. I want to talk about being hydrated. So being hydrated is very important for BDSM, having a good time. It affects your ability to bruise, affects your ability to heal. If you're doing things like bondage, if you're really severely dehydrated, it can actually, in my personal experience, I find when I'm really dehydrated, bondage is harder because I'm dehydrated and thirsty, and your skin tends to get like dented more by like rope and cuffs and things like that when you're dehydrated. So stay hydrated. It's good for you, good for your brain. I'm trying to do it. And we have a little cucumber purple water bottle action, and I'd like to decorate this with stickers at some point, so we may be decorating this with stickers. I have lots of cute bunny and puppy stickers I've been saving for literally years that I haven't put on anything yet, and you know, this water bottle sticks around. I kind of want to cover this up, really. I'm not awake at 8 a.m. drinking water, and I'm awake for about 4 or 5 hours after 8 p.m. So this is not even helpful for me, and I don't want this. Listen, if you have a praise kink, great for you. If you don't have a praise kink, or you don't want your water bottle telling you to awaken your thirst at 10 a.m., you might want to cover it with stickers. So this is my water bottle, and we're gonna stay hydrated. So reminder, stay hydrated. My water bottle doesn't have a name yet. Should we name it? I feel like I would want to name it after I put stickers on. I'm trying to close it a little bit. It can be a little bit finicky with like actually getting water out with the straw. So it's also basically like a giant sippy cup. So, you know, if you're little or whatever, what is a sippy cup if not a cup with a lid and straw? Think about it. All right, let's get into some questions. So again, thank you all so much for being here. I really, really love doing these Fridays. I always look forward to it. It's always a great time. So I think I may pass out after this stream. That's a lie. Coffee for breakfast, Diet Pepsi for lunch, and a half gallon of peach tea for dinner. Listen, that counts as being hydrated. Half a gallon of peach tea. That's basically what this is. Oh my gosh. That's your body saying it needs a reset, I think. Bandit is a positive pup. She's not currently here. So, womp womp womp. She's probably outside, as her thing she likes to do. So she's not here currently, but she may visit us later. She visited us yesterday during the Thursday stream on Patreon. She just busted through the door and was like, "Hello world, here I am." It's very funny. I do not have any snacks though. That is probably not the best thing on my part. Hope you're all doing well. I'm still in a great mood from my vacation last week. Well, I'm glad you had a great vacation. Vacations are such a great reset. I feel like I've been in a really great mood lately. I just feel super productive. I feel super engaged. I'm really, like, I have so many ideas for things I want to do. I'm collaborating with a ton of people. I just feel like August is like a really awesome month. I feel like I'm finally out of my funk from like living in an apartment by myself for a long time and then having COVID and winter, and just maybe it's because I'm spending time outside and I'm actually getting like adequate levels of vitamin D for the first time in my life. I don't know. Who's to say? Who's to say? Oh my gosh, hello, first time viewer, Mindless Peace. So glad you're here. I'm doing great. Let me know if you have any questions, because I should mention this for new people. Just because we have something in the title doesn't mean we're going to talk about it. Sometimes that happens. It's really an interactive Q&A. So I basically answer whatever questions you guys have that could be related to BDSM, kink, fetishes, alternative relationships, polyamory, asexuality, birth control, like any of the things I talk about on my channel. Fair game to talk about during the live stream. And in fact, even things that I don't talk about on my channel, feel free to ask. My only real rules are like, I don't talk about like how to do edge play. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to like drink your partner's blood on a live stream. I don't give medical advice. I don't give mental health advice. Those are really the three things, because those either need to be handled by professionals or would get me in trouble with YouTube. So those guidelines in mind, that is basically the parameters. Ask away. Yeah, the angle is better. We all do a dance to the OBS cons. Yes. OBS I'm so glad it's free. It's awesome, but the settings are not necessarily intuitive. And I don't even really think I'm like bad at technology. It's just, if you're not really familiar with like audiovisual stuff, and I never did anything in school related to anything audiovisual at all. I was actually, well, say that I'm not bad at computers. I was very bad at typing actually as a kid. I was so slow. So I was really bad at like computer class in school because I typed really slowly. But yeah, it was not a natural talent that I had. And yet, I'm a professional YouTuber. So, you know, dear middle school computer teacher, you can stop being mean to me now. Look at all that I've done. My whole job is typing. I just type all day. I write like 5, 6, 8 pages sometimes. Just typing it out. Not staring at my keys, not chicken pecking anymore. I didn't think I really ever did that. But I figured it out eventually, okay? You know what actually cured my inability to type is playing MMOs. So video games actually solved all of my problems. But yeah. Oh my gosh, hi Kendra Lee. Yes, I remember you just joined my Patreon. I sent you a message earlier today. Don't know if you saw it, but I'm so glad you're there. And I hope that you get to all of your things just fine. And if you can't find something on Patreon, send me a message. We'll figure it out. I'll get you linked to the right place. Sometimes Patreon, especially if you're not used to it, can be... There's a lot of segments, and they are in the middle of changing their layout and some website stuff, so I don't know. Things might be changing again soon, but I am happy to help you navigate. What's the kinkiest leafy green? Oh, like a vegetable? Okay, what exactly defines a leafy green? Because can I say broccoli? Is broccoli a leafy green? What is a leafy green? Okay, there's a chart. The internet has a chart. All right. Spinach, kale, broccoli, arugula, bok choy, cabbage, watercress, coriander leaves, fennel, lettuce, wait, arugula again, different arugula, mustard greens, celery, artichoke. Oh, artichoke. Okay, I don't have to read anymore. It's artichoke. Final answer. I say that because I'm fairly positive that either there is a metal implement that is based on an artichoke that is used for janitorture stuff, or I think it's the most likely vegetable that's a leafy green for somebody to try and put up their butt. So that is what makes it kinky. That's my answer. Looking a lot brighter. Oh yes, and I changed some of the color settings as well, so hopefully like it should look more like my actual skin. I don't know. I feel like it looks like I have really uneven skin texture, but really I just have like all of this. I just have like tons of baby freckles. Like I've always had freckles, and I also like grew up a lot in like Florida and in the South, so I just, freckles are part of the game. Oh. My garage door is opening. Goodbye or hello, roommate that is leaving or coming back. Oh my gosh, you made chickpea brownies? That sounds so good. I made fig cake earlier this week, and then hopefully maybe tonight. I have two ideas, because I have a fig tree in my yard that I thought was ornamental that's not, and it has real figs on it. And it turns out there's not a lot of fig recipes. Like, especially for sweet dishes, like, people they go, we don't know what to do with this, just eat it, I guess. Like, nobody knows what to do with figs. So, I made a fig cake. It was really good. And tonight, I think I'm going to there's a Turkish thing that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, but it's like a Turkish fig pudding that's basically just, like, steamed milk and figs put together, and it turns into, like, a fig pudding. And I'm going to try that. So we'll see how that turns out. But I love baking. I love cooking. It's so much fun. I've been doing a ton of it this summer, and I love it. I'm just, you know what? In a different life, let's be honest. If I wasn't a BDSM educator, I had 3 potential life paths, as do honestly most people. The 3 life paths: BDSM influencer, religious trad wife, and career woman. Those were the 3 options I had. And I kind of straddled the line between BDSM influencer and career woman for a little while, but I just have so much to talk about online, It's just like there's so much to get into that this has to be a full-time job. I could probably do it part-time, but it's really hard when you're a YouTuber and you're working another job, especially when you're like me and you make 2 videos a week and you live stream a lot and you have a Patreon, do a lot of other stuff. It's so hard to maintain having another job on top of that, because then you're only, like, especially if you work an office job, the only time you can really do YouTube is, like, in the evenings after, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then the weekends. And so you basically, it's like having a full-time job and then also a part-time job, and that just is not very sustainable. But if you have 2 part-time jobs, like YouTube and something else, I feel like it's a lot easier. I have this new sub who keeps tricking me into letting her top from the bottom. Okay, tell me more, Tyler. What is going on in that scenario? Okay, I don't know if maybe we got a follow-up from Tyler. Let me know. @MeTyler. What is that? What do you want help with that? If you want help, because you haven't actually asked a question. And 2, what do you mean by tricking me into letting her top from the bottom? Because what I'm picturing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that sounds like, oh, I have a new submissive, and then we start, she comes on to me, and she wants a scene, and then when we start playing, she kind of bosses me around, and, like, is really specific about what she wants, and, I don't really feel like I get to be the dom. And I feel like this is a very important thing, because not everyone who is a bottom is a submissive. And I think there's a very, very common mistake that newer people make, is they think because they want to be spanked or experience a certain sensation, that means that they're submissive. And that's definitely not true. There's a lot of people who actually know somebody in the rope bondage community that is a dominant rope bottom who likes to be very much in control while in rope and while being suspended. And they actually teach a class about it because it's kind of unusual. People don't know how to navigate it. So I think it's really important, especially with newer people, to really kind of drill down, like, are you doing this because you want to, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Let me make that.
Anon donated $5.
Thank you.
So glad to catch a stream. Your content has taught me so much and inspired me to be authentic to myself, kinks and all.
Aww.
Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much, Anon. That is such a sweet message. I really genuinely do try to help people be authentic to themselves, and not just that, but like present a diverse experience of kink and let people know, hey, you can like this or this or this. You don't have to like everything, right? It's you choose. You have a million options on the menu. There's like, I think I listed 250 different kink activities at some point in the checklist. Like, there's a lot. So I'm super happy. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for your super chat. But getting back to the topping from the bottom question, I think you really have to drill down into, why is it that they want to receive a sensation or do a kind of play? And it could be because they want to experience a certain sensation. They want, just to feel a spanking. It could be because they're trying to get off. It could be because they like to feel a loss of control, or they want to feel like they have a strong, kind of dangerous partner. It could be because they want to feel like they're overcoming something or enduring something. And there is so much that can go into the psyche of doing BDSM that it can take a while to really figure out what it is for you. And it's totally the case that you might start exploring with a partner and think, our relationship's this way. And then you actually start doing it, and then, yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you as well, Dave. Huge fan, and thanks for the content. Yes, you are so welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And please let me know if you have any questions. I love doing these streams. They are so much fun. And I love getting to see you guys. I'm trying to figure out a good place to put this since I reorientated the whole thing. Anyways, we're gonna have to experiment with that. I don't know where I want this exactly. Maybe we'll start in the lower corner there. But thank you so much. Yeah, so those are sort of my initial thoughts on the new sub, kind of topping from the bottom. Alternative explanation is that when somebody is new to doing BDSM, we have to remember this is like a scary thing for a lot of people. And you might have a lot of buildup in your head, like in terms of anxiety with, oh my gosh, this is going to be so painful. This is going to hurt really bad. My partner's going to be scary. This is scary. I don't know how I'm going to react. I don't know if I'm going to look hot or not. I don't know if I'm going to say the right things or make the right noises or whatever. And that can really make people kind of try and grab back control a little bit. Not necessarily because they're consciously trying to, or because they really want to be the ones in control, but they have so much anxiety and fear going into it that they try to kind of wrest back control because that's kind of what soothes them and helps them feel okay with the scenario. And if that's, if you have a conversation about this and you kind of figure out that's where it's coming from, is they have a lot of fear and anxiety with truly letting go into a scene and truly letting somebody, dictate what happens and be in control. If you're playing with top or dom sub stuff versus top bottom stuff, then I think that's a sign to sort of back up, pause, maybe do a little bit less intense scenes, maybe let them pre-dictate a little, like, don't, if you're trying to avoid the topping from the bottom during the scene, I think that kind of indicates, if it's a anxiety or fear thing beforehand, that you need to do more negotiation up front, as opposed to, like, maybe they're scared because they have no idea what to expect, or they're afraid it's going to hurt, or they don't know what you're going to do. And I think you need to kind of tailor and, okay, now we're going to do scenes, and what's going to happen. It's going to be a flogging or a spanking or bondage or sensory deprivation, and really let them know ahead of time what it is that is going to happen. And then, use the power of your dom voice, use the power of your top voice, and talk to them during the scene itself to kind of, in a way that makes sense with the role play you're doing, obviously. Don't just be like, all right, take it out of the flogger. Warning. Unless you want to be silly like that. It's kind of a dad joke sort of environment. But you can approach it in this way of, like, kind of, maybe not even verbally, but non-verbally letting them know, kind of draping the flogger across their back, or stroking their cheek with a crop, or, kind of showing it in front of their face, or, kind of doing this with your hand. This is kind of a more feminine way of doing it, but if you're like a female top or a female dom, like, do this with your hand and kind of Get them to tilt their chin up towards whatever it is you want them to look at. Or if you're a male dom, you've negotiated for this, negotiate for touching first, because a lot of people are sensitive to face touching and can find it really intense. So also talk about this, you know, is it okay if I touch or manipulate your face or body during play? Talk about it. You know, you can also, you know, take the chin. Don't like necessarily grab it like just okay, but like take the chin and rotate it where you want to look. Make sure that you can visually show them what it is you want to do before you start doing it, so even during the scene they kind of know what's coming next. And maybe don't go so hard on like the bondage, the sensory deprivation, and things like that if you are doing impact play, because it can make it harder for people to process. And I know people that are fairly experienced in BDSM that when they do impact play, they don't play with blindfolds, they don't play with gags, because it feels too restrictive, and then that makes the scene overwhelming and scary for them. So anyways, those are some hot tips and tricks that you didn't ask for, but I wanted to share. So thank you for indulging me and letting me talk about this. Oh my gosh. Above the mic? Oh, that's where I had it before, but then it kind of goes under my face. So, all right, I'll take y'all's word for it. Above my face. All right. Been watching the channel for a while. First time being able to catch one of these live. Hope everyone is good. Yeah. So glad you're here. Deanston. Glad you can make it. Ask any questions you've been sitting on. I am happy to go over anything. I'm just like vibing today. Oh no. Warning, I got yeeted to the bottom of the chat. I will miss some questions. And oh no, we're good. I think I missed maybe okay. What YouTube does is I can't see every chat at once, and if too many chats go by, it like erases them, and so there's a max amount that you can scroll back basically on YouTube. And that is what I do. I have like one open where I see all the most recent chats, and then one where I kind of am looking specifically through for every question. And make sure that if you want to ask a question, do it soon. Do it as soon as possible, because I cannot guarantee that I will answer every question. Every question. I don't know why I just lisped that, but okay. I'm actually a milk chocolate person. Dark chocolate is okay. I think I'm mostly just sick of dark chocolate because all of the vegan options are always dark chocolate, and then I just get bored. I'm like, there has to be a way to make vegan milk chocolate, but none of the chocolate companies that are like easily available seem to have figured that out for some reason. All right. Oh, by the way, so I will just announce this now. So if you guys like to hang out with me and you like talking about BDSM and gossiping and shooting the shit, I am doing a special Patreon live stream. Any Patreon tier, any dollar amount, we are doing a live stream tomorrow at noon on the West Coast, so 3 o'clock on the East Coast, and I think it's 8 p.m. in the UK, so even if you're in Europe, you can still watch with us, all right? Saturday, tomorrow, we are going to be watching a mini-series? There's a mini-series, no, I don't think it's a docu-series. A mini-series called Submission that was actually recommended, I think was it Twixie Shores, are they here? I think it was one of y'all recommended it to me. I found it. We're going to watch it tomorrow. We're going to marathon the whole series. It's about 2.5, 3 hours. And it's going to be a fun time. So you guys want to see, you know, my first impression reactions to a series that, if you don't know what Submission is, it is a mini-series that was released right in, like, the midst, like, in the middle, like, 2016, like, 50 Shades of Grey film franchise being really big. And I'm not sure if it's good or bad. I have a vague memory of seeing one of the episodes when I was in Belize it was dubbed in Spanish. So I thought that was very entertaining that because I remember a scene by a pool. That's all I remember. I think I saw part of one episode when I was in Belize a couple years ago, and Belize was wonderful, and I'm excited to watch the show with you guys. I think it's going to be a fun time. If it's terrible and cringy, we'll laugh at it together. If it's awesome, I will be happy to recommend, hopefully, a better representation of BDSM for the rest of y'all. It should be a fun time. Again, Patreon, patreon.com/evlupine, one word, any tier, any dollar amount. And I will leave it up for a couple days, by the way. If you guys are not able to make it tomorrow at noon, I do leave it up for a couple days for people to like watch it back or watch part of it if they came in late or like left early or something. So, but I love doing those streams. We did one for How to Build a Sex Room recently. We did one for Love and Leashes. We've done one for all kinds of movies. We're going to do another one in September for the Army Hammer documentary that's coming out as well, but they're always a fun time. So, yes. And there you go. Nightbot just conveniently put links to my Patreon in the chat. So, anyway, shilling over. Sorry for that. That was on my to-do list mentally of like things to talk about during the stream. So, don't worry. It's over. Shilling time is over. But yes, I'm like so excited for tomorrow. I'm just like, I'm having a good time. All right, having a good time. All right, next question. Not sure if you put in your 2 cents on Sunstone. You're a fan. I got my Friends with Benefits a collar. It's super fun and was not super weird at the pet store, surprisingly. So I have read a little bit of Sunstone. I am sorry to say I have not read all of it yet. It is on my to-do list of media to consume. It will happen eventually. I have heard nothing but good things from everyone I know that has read it. And congrats on getting your Friends with Benefits a collar. And you know what? There are a lot of people that work at pet stores, I'm sure, that know that people that come in and buy dog collar and nothing else are probably getting it for a partner. But, you know, as long as you don't act like weird in public and your partner's not walking on, you know, hands and knees inside the pet supply store, just act normal. Just act like you're a person that knows how to function like a little bit and you'll probably be fine. But congrats, it's very fun, and I will take this opportunity to remind people in the chat that just because somebody has a collar doesn't mean that they are colored, and doesn't mean that they necessarily have a dom sub 24/7 BDSM relationship. Collars are also practical, fun tools that can be used in bondage, can be used for the mental headspace they create, are just practical, and can just be about fun, you know? So sometimes they mean something, sometimes they don't. You know? Like, some people wear rings for fashion, some people only wear a wedding ring. So, just putting that out there. Oh no, you forgot to put vanilla in your brownies. That is a hard mistake to undo. I think only ice cream will solve that. Joking during sex. It's definitely a practice once considered a fetish for adults who favor bondage and domination, but now it's like everyone likes it. Well, my dear friend Kitsune, I thank you for allowing... Oh, God, sorry. Microphone. I'm so sorry, microphone. I'm so sorry. Should I ASMR whisper about joking? If I ASMR whisper about joking, is that a thing that people are into, or should I use a normal voice? I will let people answer that. Oh my gosh, thank you, Andrew. While in Vegas, I met a girl and we played. That was my first time playing, and it was perfect. I think I'm in love. Any advice on being a long-distance partner? So it's really funny you asked that, Andrew. I'm actually next Friday, I am interviewing a couple that has a BDSM podcast where they actually talk a lot about having long-distance BDSM relationships. So I will have some advice for you very soon in detail. I don't have a ton of advice about being a long-distance partner because I've had long-distance relationships in the past. I've not had one that's been a BDSM relationship, but I think the fundamentals of all relationships are honestly the same across the board, right? It's about communication. It's about... it's really about like making sure you communicate your expectations and make time for each other, right? Like, do they want to be texting all day every day? Like, can you do that with your work or with your schedule? Like, do you want a video chat? Do you want a voice chat? Do you use different apps to stay connected with each other? Do you email? Do you phone call every night? Like, make sure you have a way to stay connected and just communicate really soon up front about what your expectations for communication are. Because some people are, maybe a little bit more like me. Let's be honest. I don't necessarily want to text every single day, especially early on in a relationship. I really like my work and I tend to stay focused on that. And so, they might be more of sort of like me where they want to text every day, every other day. very sporadically, or they might want to be in constant contact all day, just want to chit chat about literally everything. So yeah, well, congratulations. It's so awesome that you met somebody and you had a really, really good time. And definitely being a long distance partner is totally something that you can do, is totally possible. And it's just about, setting up expectations, making communication easy, and finding important ways that you guys can stay connected and, maybe make plans to see each other in the future, right? So, yeah. You just ask them. Exactly. It's always asking. It's funny how often it goes back to just like, ask questions. Don't necessarily make assumptions, for sure. No, not joking. Choking during sex. Okay. Okay, let's talk about choking. All right, content warning. We're going to talk about choking. We're talking about choking. Everyone's favorite subject on the internet. So, I'm not sure exactly when or like how choking got popular. Like at some point in the not too distant past, like decades ago, choking was not like a common sex activity. It was something that like primarily was used in like slasher movies or serial killer documentaries or horror stuff in general. Like choking was not seen as like a fun sex thing. And I don't know who we can blame, if it's Cosmo, if it's Men's Health, if it's magazines, movies. I don't think it's like 50 Shades of Grey. I don't think it's that recent. I think it probably goes back a little while longer. But I think in general, I think with what I have sort of seen in our society, and maybe I just had this kind of brain awakening moment. I had an epiphany, okay? The three wise men visited me. I had this realization that when our society started to change to become more sex positive in the limited way that it is, because it's not really that sex positive, but they love using sex to sell advertisements. As our society has become more sexually open, I would even say to some extent more sexually demanding, and that there are more expectations about the activities and types of sex that you will enjoy. Like it used to be in the 1950s, your boyfriend that picked you up and had you in the back of his Thunderbird or whatever probably wasn't expecting anal. But now that it's 2020, like a lot of people are pressured for giving and receiving oral sex, giving and receiving anal sex, vaginal sex, all of the above. Every combination of genitals is kind of on the board at this point. And I think there's been an increase in the one that people know those things are possible, but also sort of a level of desire of like, well, everyone does this. Everyone else they know is willing to give me a hand job and a blow job and, let me put, my penis inside them in every hole. And that's just how things are. And like, if you don't do that, you're being a prude, you're being sex negative, you're being judgmental, yada, yada, yada. And so I think sexual expectations are higher. The expectation of sexual diversity in relationships is a lot higher than it used to be. And I'm not even necessarily saying that's bad. I'm just saying that, like, especially for like very like younger age bracket people, especially in heterosexual relationships, let's say from like 15 to 25, I think there's way more pressure to like just suddenly be into and suddenly be ready for a lot of sexual activities and kind of pushing towards things that seem more extreme and edgy. And I think especially in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of I don't know, not really even a resurgence, but sort of this like organic growth of like desirability for, being seen as edgy, being seen as alternative and dangerous and like freaky, and being really free with your sexuality. And I think part of that kind of like, being pressured and also sort of like in a social sense, but then also sort of like, okay, we can explore more and do more. Like, what can we do that seems really edgy and fun and cool? Naturally, things like spanking come up. Naturally, things like choking come up. And I think that's kind of how it snuck in a little bit, is we've had, and this is sort of the revelation I had, is we have had an increase in sex positivity and an increase in the expected sex acts that average heterosexual people are expecting to have as part of a sexual relationship. But we have not seen a corresponding increase in either consent or in people's risk awareness about certain types of activities. So we're dealing with, like, I would say we're getting better. So I should be clear. We're getting better in certain aspects of it. I think in general, we are having more conversations, especially, you know, amongst probably people that are members of my audience, about like the Fry's model, right? And like informed consent and revocable consent and those sorts of ideas where it is, oh, thank you, Twixie. I definitely, there,
donated $5.
There we go.
I definitely remember autoerotic asphyxiation became talked about mainstream a few years back, which I definitely related to choking.
Yeah, and that I think, so the popular conception, I think, of like choking during sex, especially previous to a couple of years ago, was like usually like the joke you'd hear is, you know, somebody died because of, you know, autoerotic asphyxiation, which is where somebody chokes themselves, typically using a device, you know, hooked up to a door or a bed frame or something, in a way to be able to achieve arousal and eventually produce an orgasm while masturbating. That is extremely deadly. I never recommend that anybody do it, but that was sort of the popular idea about it, was that like, oh yeah, this guy, you know, died with his dick in his hand, like, because he died while being choked to death because he tried to do that to get off. And in the last couple of years, and I think that was almost seen as like kind of cringy or gross, and like now it's shifted to where people sort of think of like hot, dominant alpha male chokes hot lady in bed, and that's sexy and hot, and that's like that's not that now that's what people mostly think about. But I think it's this problem of desire for edginess and diverse sexual practices, and kind of getting the positive reputational benefits that come from, you know, being somebody who's willing to do anything, being somebody who's into a lot of stuff. If you guys were around like goth culture in the 90s and you've seen or heard stuff about that, you probably know that like this is not too far away from like what the goth community was kind of pressured around 30 years ago at this point, where teenage girls were feeling a lot of pressure to be like freaks and be into anything to impress their like older goth boyfriends. So, you know, it's kind of a cycle that's been going on for a long time at this point. But now it's not even just contained to a particular subculture, it's kind of in all of culture. And again, you have that combined with this lack of like robust talk about consent, and also not having good sex ed or risk awareness. And I think we are getting better. Again, like I was starting to say, you know, we have things like the Fry's model. We have things like informed consent. Only yes means yes. We certainly are giving people more tools and more opportunities to talk about consent. But I don't think in any way this has permeated into larger culture in a really, really meaningful capacity. But what we do have is choking becoming extremely popular. I did a video about this a couple weeks back, and not even a couple weeks, couple months back at this point. And choking is becoming increasingly popular. More and more people are experiencing it. And as I discovered, let me see here, I'm trying to pull up. I have the tweet opened, or I thought I did. Did I close it by accident? Oh, I might have. Okay, give me a second. I gotta pull up a tweet. Okay, we're pulling up a tweet. All right. I saw a very interesting study because the research that I had looked at indicated there was a very high percentage of choking that happened without any prior consent at all or any previous conversation about it. But there was some new research that came out from a different research group. Okay, here we go. I found it. So this is from Dr. Nicole Prouse, not Sprouse, Prouse on Twitter. And what it says is, new publication, 50% of undergrads, 36% of graduate, 30% of undergraduate women and 36% of graduate women, as in a university setting, report choking was very much sexually arousing, with men saying that it was arousing for them at 27% and then 16%, with about 10% reporting not liking choking, with around 5% reporting consenting to please a partner. So I will just go ahead. I will actually, I can just put a link to the tweet in the chat. So that's what I'm going to do. because I want to talk about some of the details in the chart. I don't have like a good way to like pull this up on stream right now, so just like, I don't know, take my word for it that I know how to read charts in scientific literature because it's literally part of my degree. So there is a table that they put together that is basically saying, okay, what percentage of the time was choking consensual, extent that that choking was pleasurable, either not at all, but I've let partners do it because they seem like they like it, not at all, and I don't want people to do it to me, a little bit, somewhat, very much, or other. So breaking down sort of the let's just kind of go through the highlights, right? So for people that are undergraduates, for the percentage of time that choking was consensual, this is the numbers that I think are hidden in here that I think are actually important. For trans and gender expansive, which is the phrase they use, for trans and gender expansive people, they reported that about 15% of the time for undergraduate people, the choking was not consensual at all. And then for graduate level people, choking was non-consensual 18% of the time. That is a very big difference compared to especially men and also to women. What I find interesting is that for undergraduates, the percentage of the time that choking was consensual, and they don't differentiate in here between heterosexual and homosexual or other orientation-based relationships. So I don't know if it's men choking men, if it's men being choked by female partners, I don't know what's going on there. But it's about consensual roughly the same amount of time between men and women that are undergraduates. It's about 8 to 7% of the time it's not consensual. But then for graduate level women as opposed to undergraduate level women, about 13% of the time it's not consensual. And then for men it's non-consensual about 8% of the time. So women are definitely, and trans and gender expansive people are definitely still the most likely to experience non-consensual choking. I think that any choking that happens that's non-consensual is very dangerous and bad, especially because when you look at the additional information that was gathered, because this study was essentially trying to look at, okay, how often do people get aroused by choking and how much do they get aroused? And then what are the adverse side effects that they report? And there are so many adverse side effects, oh my God, that people are reporting. And so, for example, almost 80% of trans and gender expansive people that have been choked have reported experiencing watery eyes or tearing up, which I point that out because that is over twice what it is on average for men and women. It's about 3 times what it is for men, and then a little bit under twice what it is compared to women. So, so to me, this is really interesting because when you look at all of the adverse side effects, you just across the board, every single one of them. I'm trying to just double check right here when I'm reading them, but there is not a single negative, adverse outcome or physical response to choking that women do not experience more than men, and that trans people do not experience more than women. And I think that is interesting / troubling because I think this can happen for 2 reasons. It can happen, one, because of the fact, women tend to be a little bit bonier, especially if they're having sex or doing some kind of choking behavior with somebody who is a man and it's a heterosexual relationship and they are typically physically larger than them. The choking that can happen is probably more intense and thus much more likely to cause physical responses that are negative as a result because the choking is more intense. It could happen because maybe trans people in general are kinkier on average and more okay with diverse / intense sexual experiences. It could also be because either subconsciously or consciously, people that are having sex with trans or gender expansive people don't worry about hurting them as much and are being a little bit sloppier with their technique. Personally, I think that second one probably accounts for some of the really big differences in percentages, and some of this is completely physiological and not determined by poor technique or anything. And I think that's sort of interesting how you explain that. But I think a fair portion of this is because the reason I think this is because there's lots of other research that suggests, for example, that bisexual people are similarly maligned when it comes to people feeling comfortable being violent towards them during sex without previous consent. And because this isn't broken down by orientation, it's only broken down by gender identity, we can't really suss out, like, okay, bisexual women versus bisexual men versus straight women versus straight men, because I don't think they just simply had enough people in the study to do that, or they didn't think to break down the data in that way. But previous research has indicated that bisexual people are more likely to experience sexual violence, at least in part because of biases that people have about bisexual people, about them being more sexually willing and open, being more freaks, like kind of subconsciously or consciously wanting to hurt them in some way and like punish them or dominate them more fully or something. And so I think maybe that same kind of mentality could not only exist for bisexual people, but might also in this case exist for trans people. So that is a little bit on the troubling side, I think. So yeah, and the watery eyes thing, I don't think that is an emotional response. It doesn't indicate that actually, because it's specifically, they're measuring physical responses. They don't talk about emotional responses in this, as far as like, I felt afraid, I felt scared, I felt, whatever. It's not talking about feeling words, it's talking about physical results. Does that make sense? So that is really interesting to me. And then when you get down into it, they have a particular category that they would call alterations in consciousness, which includes blurry vision, lost vision or couldn't see, felt dizzy or lightheaded like you might pass out, and then actually passing out. And lifetime experiences for people that have done any level of choking. Over 3% of trans people have just like fully passed out as a result of choking. That could be consensual. That would be a very edgy way of doing breath play. Most people don't do it to full blackout, or try not to do it to full blackout, but that happens. And then, women are twice as likely as men to experience full loss of consciousness or just straight up passing out compared to men. And then again, almost, over 25% feel like they might pass out. So it's a lot. And again, twice as many trans and gender expansive people experienced blurry vision compared to women. I think that kind of goes with the watery eyes thing as well. So that I find to be very interesting and troubling because, and this is bringing us back around to the point of the combination of lack of knowledge and talk about risk combined with sort of this pressure to have more diverse sexual experiences, is that in previous research, many people do not know about the risks of choking before they engage in choking or before a partner does choking to them. They don't really think it's that risky, partially because in their peer groups, it's been very normalized as like an expected part of like social norms. That if you are having like good rough sex, and the popularization of rough sex as being kind of the goal, which I think is interesting because I think a lot of people sort of take that as being non-emotive detached sex, but I feel like in order to have good rough sex, there usually has to be some kind of emotional connection, but that just might be me. But in any case, what I am trying to get at here is that there are huge numbers of adverse side effects that are happening to people. 3% of people are passing out. Almost over a quarter are talking about that they feel like they might pass out. Sometimes that's the goal, sometimes it's not. It's hard, the data doesn't tell us that. But people don't know what the risks are about choking, and fully losing consciousness during choking, especially when you don't expect it or don't know if it's going to happen, is very, very dangerous. It is very dangerous. You can hurt yourself, you can hit your head on something, and a lot of people, when they do pass out or they feel like they might pass out, their partner does not know what to do for them. And that is the additional danger, is somebody could pass out and hit their head, and their partner might not know what to do, might not know what to do to help them. And they might not try to get them help at all because they're afraid of getting in trouble. They don't want to go to campus police, they don't want to call an ambulance, like they just kind of sit and pray and hope their partner's going to be okay. And yeah, I can't say this loud enough as an RN. Okay, I should probably, I feel like I missed something. I want to highlight what the what you said. Or maybe you're just reacting to something that I said and you're just chiming in. But yes, hot sauce can give a similar endorphin spike. Oh my god, Mike. This is what we need to do in dorms from now on. You know how, like, sometimes they'll give out condoms and stuff? We need to give them a hot sauce packet and just be like, use this instead. Oh my gosh. This is... Yeah. Yeah, it is... Anyways, we will talk about other stuff. Don't worry. This is just, I feel like this is, just we'll get into everything. Yeah, safety on choking. Yeah, exactly. Like, people, like, I don't know, they do crazy shit. They're like, they choke each other with belts. They choke each other with fucking pantyhose. They tie the pantyhose to a doorknob and go, that's probably a good idea. Excellent. Or, you know, they just do stuff that is unnecessarily risky. And I'm not teaching you all how to choke each other. So pause. But I just feel like it's really dangerous to have this combination of lack of risk awareness, lack of general sex ed, coupled with this obvious, you know, physical enjoyment of the activity itself. And, you know, there are, I think, 2 reasons why, for example, undergraduate people report on average enjoying choking more and experiencing choking more often than people who are graduate level. I think, one, it could be a difference in age bracket. I don't see from the research, you know, the average ages of graduate versus undergraduate people, but typically, especially if you go right from undergrad to grad school, you're very close in age. This isn't like a big generational difference. I think it could just be like cumulative education level and knowledge, because if you are a graduate student and you're at an even higher level of education than undergraduate people, you tend to be more educated in a diverse variety of ways. And I think that if you know adequately the risks of choking and how dangerous it actually is, that probably has a dampening effect on your arousal, which I think is true of a lot of things. A lot of things seem very hot in theory, and then when you read about them and learn how scary they are, it kind of, you know, takes away a little bit of the magic, which is also, I think, partly what people don't want to research about this stuff, is they don't want to ruin the magic. But yeah, there's a lot. So to kind of go over sort of the actual numbers here. So for people who said that they didn't like it at all, but they only did it because a partner liked it, actually, in both cases, more men than women said that they didn't like choking at all, but did it because a partner liked it, which I think is very funny, because it's like, of course men want to do, because we're talking about heterosexual relationships, the implication is that, like, men only acquiesce to choking women because the women like it, even though they don't like it, but men feel more entitled to choke women. I think that's kind of interesting. And then sort of in between the two, trans and gender expansive people did it, and then that number varies from for as low as 4% up to almost 11%. So a good majority of people only ever do it because a partner wants it. And then what is very interesting, this is a very interesting number here, I think this could just be a sample size issue, is for trans and gender expansive people, 2% said that they don't like it at all, and they don't want people to do it to them as an undergraduate. And then 16% said that as a graduate level. But the number of total people in that gender category at each level is very different. They are, oh my god, there are literally hundreds of times more, not hundreds of times, sorry, I was looking at the wrong row. There are many times over, I'd say probably 10 times as many trans and gender expansive people in the undergraduate category as the graduate category, so I think that's kind of skewing the numbers a little bit. But the median is that most people say that it is either somewhat or very much pleasurable. Actually, with the largest portion of people, trans undergraduate people, 68% of them indicating that they enjoyed it very much. Whereas for men and women, they tend to be somewhere. And it's interesting, because I would want to know, they say trans and gender expansive, like, did they put trans women in the women category and then trans men in the men category? Or are all the, anyways, and how did you construe what the word trans means in this study? That's very important for my evaluation of this. But I think it's very interesting that this is how the numbers shake out, where a lot of people clearly very much enjoy choking, but then again, the numbers are significantly lower, especially in the very much category, versus between graduate and undergraduate people. The most common one for the graduate category is somewhat, as opposed to very much. I would have also have liked more choices than just 4. I feel like probably 6 would have been like a good number of you know, I feel like like I would do it on a scale of 1 to 10 maybe, because I think the phrases of a little, somewhat, or very much is a little bit more, like you can put your own meaning into that a little bit. I think like a numbered scale of like how much you liked it would, I think be a little bit more accurate and give you just a little bit more of a bigger sense of gradation, but that's just me. So all of this is to say that let's see what the numbers are here exactly. So like hundreds and thousands of undergraduate and graduate students are being choked, and they all really like it a lot, and they're all doing it a lot to each other. That's all the research indicates, is choking is the new hot thing. Maybe it'll be like when we invented fucking Brazilian waxes, and then from this point onward, every generation will be expected to get Brazilian waxes, because heaven forbid people have hair in or near or around their genitals, dear God. So yeah, I just think, so to be clear, my worry about this, I don't care about if choking is labeled as a kink activity or not. I don't care if like, oh my god, that's so vanilla, or oh my god, that's so kinky, or oh my god, that's whatever. I don't care about that. I don't care if it becomes vanilla. I'm not like, I don't claim ownership over it as like an activity. However, because vanilla culture doesn't value consent, doesn't talk about risk, has terrible sex ed, and definitely, like, we do not teach people what to do during accidents. All of those 4 things combined make this a very, very high risk activity for people to start to engage in as part of like a casual sex act, especially with a stranger. And they didn't, in this research, look at the relationships in which this choking was happening, right? Is it hookups? Is it friends with benefits relationships? Is it established relationships, new boyfriends, new girlfriends? Is it during a fucking orgy? I don't know. So I would like to know kind of the kind of relationship in which this took place, and if that maybe affects the numbers, because, you know, do you have more adverse outcomes in an established relationship or in a hookup relationship? Do you enjoy it more in an established relationship versus a hookup or not? Does the mystique and the mystery and the risk of doing it with a stranger make it hotter? All, I think, very important questions. So for me, the concern is the combination of lack of awareness combined with the pressure to engage in it, because again, we've seen from previous research that many people do feel very pressured to engage in BDSM-ish practices, try things, be wild, be you know, available, be able to do a diverse variety of things, and I just worry about people's safety, and I worry about people feeling pressured to do certain things that maybe they're not fully equipped to do. Like, if you didn't know that having, like, if you didn't really know what the risks of like unprotected vaginal sex were, like if you didn't know what pregnancy was, and like, would you think that like would your risk evaluation versus the pleasure of vaginal sex be different versus like if you knew about the risk of like STIs and pregnancy as a result of unprotected vaginal sex? Like, I think you probably evaluate your pleasure versus desire to do it differently if you had a full picture of what to actually expect or how risky something is or not. So yeah, there's potentially a lot of confounding issues here. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I worry. I never experienced choking or anything like that when I was in college, though at this point, I don't know when this data is from, but I've been out of college for a while. I never had any partners. Anyone tried to bring it up to me or tried to do it without asking before it during sex when I was in college, so that was something that wasn't really an issue for me. But certainly in my adulthood in general, I have had people assume that I would like choking, not ask me about it, and then start doing it during sex. And I know people personally And even if I like it, I don't feel comfortable doing it without explicit consent beforehand, because especially if it's a newer partner, like, you don't know, is this choking for fun or is this choking because they're gonna fucking kill me? And I feel like that should be something that, especially in today's day and age, should be part of like how you navigate, especially approaching sex with like femme people, is that you have to realize that a lot of us are very scared of new sexual partners and try to like get over it, and you randomly pulling danger shit out of nowhere without talking to us about it first can definitely make our red flag alarms go off and feel very uncomfortable. And Lord bless you if you're one of those people that just like is completely fine doing like risky ass super kinky sex with people you've gone on 1 or 2 dates with. I don't know how you do it mentally, but you've got something figured out. I'm happy for you, but I personally don't. It's not really where I'm at, but yeah. There's a weird mammalian reaction trying to maximize the impact of the remaining blood supply, since in the worst case scenario you only have a few seconds of consciousness. Oh. I did not know that. The horny getting in the way of the safe and informed sex. Oh, absolutely. Every single time. People are just like too horny for their own damn good. Listen, as an asexual person, I feel very good about myself, and I don't generally feel a lot of guilt and shame around being asexual, because I generally don't have issues like this in my relationships or in my dating life, you know. Although I definitely have to deal with expectations with people, and now, you know, I haven't had a new sexual partner in a really long ass time at this point, so it's not like been a conversation I've had to have recently, but certainly if I was having a new sexual partner, like, I would make sure to have that conversation, because they would know that I'm kinky, and they would like, if we got to that point, they know a lot about me, and I'd be very explicit about I know that a lot of people are really into choking, and that's especially because for some reason I end up matching with a lot of people that are like new to kink and are like, oh my god, I want to explore kink, I want to try BDSM, I'm really interested in it. And then I have to sit them down and explain to them that doing this is the part that makes me mad, this is the part that I am salty about, is there are a lot of people who are new to BDSM that want to explore it, that come into it with their vanilla understanding of it, and they just think that you can kind of go with the flow and go with the mood and be like, oh, I just assumed you would want choking. Because you're kinky, I just thought you would like stuff like that. Or I just assumed that you were bisexual. Or I just assumed that whatever. You know, I just assumed that you'd want me to put a blindfold on you or pin your wrist back and make it so you couldn't move or whatever. And just do stuff without talking about it first. And it was like, no. Actually, because I'm kinky, and especially because I'm a kink educator, my standards are much higher than that. And you're going to have to talk about me if you want to have any hope of us going in any sort of sexual direction. So yeah, it's something you gotta have conversations about beforehand, and it can be awkward because you don't always know if the other person is even thinking about that. But it's like, you know, just say in general, hey, like when we're engaging in sex, like if you're gonna do something like new, I want to talk about it first before it happens, you know. So just make sure you open the door to those conversations. That's basically it. So, to summarize all of this, is choking vanilla? Is choking vanilla? I would say that choking has become very mainstream, but I wouldn't necessarily say that makes it vanilla, because it is still a very high risk activity. And most people I know that are educators that talk about BDSM, especially people that are in the healthcare field and like nurses and stuff, they do not do breath play. They do not recommend doing breath play. They especially wouldn't do it for strangers. So I feel like with strangers, so I think it's gone very mainstream and been sort of abstracted from a kink context, and that has led to some potentially more dangerous outcomes, and for sure has led to more dangerous outcomes. But I don't think that makes it not kinky. I just think that means that a bunch of otherwise vanilla, or like kind of just like they're vanilla, but they're just into like risky sex or like into high intensity sex, but like high intensity or like rough sex isn't kink. Like it's not BDSM-R where the R stands for rough sex, right? Like rough sex is still vanilla. It's not like it's, unless you're doing something that involves bondage or dominance or something, like it doesn't make you into BDSM to like rough sex or enjoy elements of things that are part of rough sex. I think it kind of straddles this line between being kinky and being not kinky because of the way that it's used. I think it is primarily still a kink activity. I think that makes it very dangerous, but people are doing it that aren't part of BDSM that I wouldn't call like BDSM people or call like kinky, but they're doing it because they enjoy like rough, intense sex acts, but they don't necessarily really know what they're getting into, and that worries me, especially with the number of people that say that they enjoy it very much, which typically indicates that they are going to want to do it repeated times and do it often. And that kind of creates this cycle of like, well, I was with this girlfriend and she was really into choking, so I think that girls like choking, and so I'm going to take that information I gained from that experience and look at other relationships the same way and assume that people are going to like something in the same way that I assume that people, like a certain way of kissing or a certain way of whatever. And so it just ends up, I think, just making the issue larger and larger and larger because people aren't really having conversations about it or like thinking about that it's about one person they were with like this thing doesn't mean that everyone likes it. And again, just with the other data that I've seen about the number of people that experience like non-consensual choking, like it was more than a quarter, I think, in the other research that I've seen about this. I could probably actually pull up the data if I look through enough of my files on my computer here, but I don't really want to do that right now. Sorry, but this is kind of like saying, is Cnc vanilla because so many vanilla people have questionable consent practices? No, I think that's very different because consensual non-consent involves a very explicit form of consent in order to not consent. And like just having questionable consent is not what Cnc is. They're very different. Like if you don't have any level of consent at all and if you just do assumed consent or implied consent, like implied consent is not consensual non-consent because you're only going ever off of implication, whereas Cnc is thoroughly negotiated beforehand and discussed and then implemented under very pre-agreed upon explicit boundaries of what is going to take place within that consensual non-consent framework. So no, I think it's very different. Vanilla people often want to do some kinky stuff, but without the safety measures kinky people use, which is very infuriating. IMO, can I ever kinky too? Well, and this is the thing, right? This is the thing that bothers me about this. I think more so, like I'm not bothered that so many people like choking. I'm not like, I know some people have this attitude of like, oh my god, I can't believe like I'm supposed to be this like really edgy, intense person and I like choking, and now all these normal people are saying they like choking. Well, I'm really the edgy one and they can't claim to be edgy like me, and so blah blah blah. Like they try to be very gatekeepy about stuff, and that's not the approach I'm coming at things with. But what does frustrate me is when people very openly and clearly, according to the research, with a lot of pleasure, is they are basically, with on the one hand engaging in sort of kink or kink adjacent activities for themselves, and they're really enjoying it and they really like it, but they still are like, BDSM is for freaks, people that dress up like dogs are weirdos, people who like using pacifiers and sippy cups are all deranged freaks that are secretly pedophiles and need to be burned off of the earth. Like, listen, when I do puppy play, I'm not generally putting myself in grave physical danger where I have at any point a 3% chance of fully passing out. Like, the level of judgment that still exists for the BDSM community and for people that do certain kinky things or certain role play things other than choking, there's just so much, there's so much disgust and mistrust and just belief that like the people like that are broken, they come from bad home lives and bad families, they were abused as children, they have all, they're perverts and freaks, they shouldn't be trusted in like pleasant or like normal society, right? So much hatred, so much judgment, and then like meanwhile they all fucking love choking, and it's like, sir or ma'am, What are you doing? Stop it. That's not the way. So, I don't know. If choking's gonna become a vanilla activity, we gotta have better than, like, the absolute less than bare bones sex ed that we currently have. Like, it's not fair. Like, it's just not fair to, have this activity that so many people find very pleasurable, which means they are going to be very motivated to do it in casual relationships, in brand new relationships, under maybe less than ideal conditions, i.e. when drinking or consuming drugs or other intoxicating substances. And then they're gonna, like, do it and they don't have the risk. Like, we gotta at least, like, do something to facilitate people knowing that, like, hey, that really hot thing that you want to do that's super fun, it's actually pretty dangerous, and here's what you need to know about that. In the same way that, like, sex in general is usually fun for people, if you're not, a sex repulsed ace person, shout out to y'all. I'm sex neutral, but I see it where I go towards sex repulsed pretty often sometimes, so I get it. But I just feel like we're, like, throwing people to the wolves almost, like, with this combination of, like, no sex ed, no consent culture, no expectation, especially in a college setting, that you will negotiate or stick up for your boundaries or talk about sex, talk during sex, or talk after sex. Like, it's like people, like, at no point are you, like, allowed or is it normalized to talk about what happens during sex. I had a fucking huge argument with somebody that I don't even usually respect them, but I respect them at least some of the time, their opinions. I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were, like, almost offended at they were just offended at the insinuation that I had an expectation that I think it is generally a good idea to talk about sex. Like, talk about what you're going to do during sex. Talk about what your sexual desires are. Talk about stuff during sex. Ask for explicit consent to things. And they're like, oh, well, it can ruin the mood, and don't be so judgmental, and what if it means people can't get off, and blah, blah, blah. Listen. You don't really know what other shit you're dealing with when it comes to other people, what baggage they are taking into a scenario, what previous bad experiences they've had, and especially if it's the first time you've interacted with somebody, what they like or don't like. So, I get it. If it ruins the mood, if it turns you off, I get it. However, I think that is something that can be changed over time with the right messaging, the right normalization in key parts of development. I think we could very easily change it so talking about sex before, during, or after, before, during, and after even, would become the new norm and would become the expectation, and therefore wouldn't turn people off on its face, I felt like I've noticed a lot of mental health problems with people in the BDSM community in general. It's interesting. Well, I'm sorry to say, but that is absolutely incorrect. It's not true at all in any way. There are many studies about this. People in the BDSM community are not in any way more traumatized or more mentally ill than the general population. However, people that are in BDSM have to talk about their trauma and their mental health issues, because while in everyday society you can get away with not talking to your hookup partner about the sexual assault you experienced 5 years previously, if you're doing a consensual non-consent scene at a dungeon with a dom, you might want to talk about your trauma triggers, so that way if you say or do something very loudly in a public dungeon, your partner doesn't get the police called on them or get pulled off of you, or they know what to expect and not freak out when it happens. The difference is, does it get talked about? Is talking about it normalized and encouraged? So, It's not that people are any more likely to be mentally ill. Again, you can look it up. The research on this is very clear. People who are into BDSM are not any more mentally, and in fact, especially, for example, dominant women have better mental health outcomes on average than the general population of women. So make of that what you will. Again, Evie, I had an amazing time at 1763 or 1763. I'm not sure what that is. Last weekend, and I had an amazing time. Everyone was so welcoming and friendly, plus it was stations night. It's probably like a taster party, I imagine. I learned so much. Thanks for helping the BDSM community. You are so welcome, Strix. I'm so glad that you had a great time. I've never been to Atlanta. I have heard good things about the scene around there, so I'm glad that you had a good time, and thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for the super chat. Sometimes, if a donation, I'm so sad. I think I fucked up my donation. Well, I will check very quickly. It could be if you use YouTube, it should just go right through. But I will check really quickly if I got a notification or something on my phone from a super chat that just didn't pop up on stream. Because if it's a low dollar amount, it won't show up on stream. Just FYI, it might not. I think if it's like $1, it might show up. Okay, no, I saw that one. I saw that one. Yeah, I am. Let me see. I have gotten. Okay. I have one. Let's see. When was this recent? Oh, the most recent one I have is from 6:51, so almost half an hour ago. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of dungeons do close. All right, that is my rant about choking. Thank you all for listening to me rant. I'm going to go back to some general questions. I'm sure we will talk lots more about choking as we continue the conversation. And thank you all so much for being here. And thank you for, again, listening to me ramble. I'm just going to, as I scroll up, I'm going to, if I see any like highlights about the choking conversation, I'll just like shout it out. Oh, okay. Let's talk about this. I'm a plus size woman and I have a lot of doms tell me that if we get together, they want to help me lose weight so I can be sexier for them. That is very hurtful to me. Any thoughts? That's disgusting. My thought is that's gross. My thought is stop it. Get some help. like, is it worse than people who want to like force feed you and project a feederism kink onto you? I don't know. That is gross though. And God, there's so many fat phobic men. What are you doing? Stop it. No, I don't get it. Like, again, maybe this is because I'm asexual and I just don't get it. But yeah, I just like fat people are not like ugly and unsexy and need like your help to lose weight. All right, we have a super chat also from Kyla May. Love your streams. Thank you for keeping me sane at work on Friday nights. I'm looking to pick a good collar out with my partner. Do you have any recommendations? So, Kayla, that totally depends on what you want to use the collar for. If you want something that is like jewelry that you can wear every day and not have to take off, and you want something that's like a really powerful symbol of your relationship, I recommend looking into metal locking collars. There is To Be His, and I believe also Eternity Collars is still open. And they make really, really good metal collars. I also like ones that look like jewelry, look like pearls and things like that have a discreet lock on the back. Those are really cool as well. If you want something more practical for play, I really like biothane collars. And the reason I like biothane, 1, it's vegan. 2, very easy to clean. And you can wear it in the shower, in the bathtub, at the pool. You can wear it anywhere, anytime you want without having to worry about degrading it or damaging it. And that's what I like. So and then for traditional bondage collars, I really like Vaughn Bondage. I don't know if they're still on Etsy or not, but that is where before I was vegan, I got a lot of my leather collars from. So that is what I'm into. And then if you're a little or into DDLG, there is a UK-based shop called Ceremony Leather, previously known as Tigger's Collars, that has a lot of very cute pastel, just very cute, more petite leather collars that come in like a whole rainbow of colors. So those are my quick recommendations for collars. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing all of the I think I'm seeing all the donations, but I don't know why some of them, if they're not showing up, I don't know why they're not going through. Okay, here's a $5 one, so there you go. Recovering from bulimia and overshot my safe weight. Helping me means me going back to destructive habits. Fuck D types like that. Yeah, like what? Like, no, like, you can have a power exchange relationship where an element of it is your partner helping you lose weight or develop other healthy habits or a healthy relationship with food, right? Ideally, that would be done with the support of outside help like a nutritionist, because your dom is not a nutritionist. They're not a physical therapist. They're not a coach. They're not a whatever. And I guess unless they actually are, typically. But yeah, no, you don't get to just be like, actually, sweetie, I'm going to fix your gross body and make you more appealing to me by getting rid of, I would like you if you lost some weight. So let me be your dom so that way you can actually be attractive to me. Like, no. Like, if you're going to have a relationship that involves weight loss or healthy eating habits or whatever, if you want to go vegan or you want to eat less sugar or you want to lose 10 pounds or whatever, that has to be done, I think, with the submissive partner initiating it originally, because food is such a hot button issue and you never know what somebody's background is. You never know if they have a history of eating disorders, if they were bullied as a child, if their parents starved them. You never know. And it's better to not mess with that, I feel like. And no fat phobia in the chat. I have no qualms weeding out the fat phobes in my audience. And I say that, like, I've been skinny my whole life. My family generally, well, my dad's side of the family is a little different, but my family generally is on the skinnier side. I have not been bullied for my weight, like, ever in my life. So, I'm saying that with that level of privilege in mind. But just don't. The fat phobia, it's not necessary. People's bodies are just bodies, okay? Like, let people exist, okay? Eat frozen yogurt, have a donut. I don't, like, whatever. Just find happiness, okay? Find happiness. That's my opinion. And I think people who are like that don't generally, like, find a lot of happiness in their life, but, It was so cool that you said the different reasons why some people may want to experience BDSM. You said mine. I want to endure and overcome something, learning that I'm more of a bottom than a sub. Yeah, oh my gosh, for sure. And also, I will add on to that, just because you want to endure and overcome something doesn't mean that you can't be a submissive. I think if that is your primary reason for wanting to explore BDSM, it's more likely that you're probably a bottom than a submissive. But you can also, there's sort of the context of, like, wanting to endure and overcome because you want to prove something to yourself and you want to be kind of better and do more than what you think is possible for yourself and get kind of that self-satisfaction of having achieved that. And then there's wanting to endure and overcome something because you want to make your partner proud, or you want to serve them by being able to take whatever it is that they can throw at you, or you want to, like, have it be a demonstration of your loyalty or the level of devotion that you have in the relationship, that you are so devoted that you can overcome whatever it is. So, there, even within that statement, there's subcategories of motivations as well. So, and even with the same person, it can vary over time or between different partners. So that's also important to remember. Yeah, I do. I know I kind of rambled for a while. We didn't get to a lot of the chat, but yes, I try to read all of the comments. So if you're in the chat, I most likely see, now maybe not everything you write, but I see most things you write. So yes, I don't always shout everyone out necessarily because we've got a system to run here. We're like a half an hour left, all right? Does a kink-themed comedic editorial video a la Scott the Woz seem like a good idea or a terrible one? I'm gonna write it anyway, but I want to hear y'all's thoughts. I think I've seen a Scott the Woz video before. I'm not really sure what's, like, an editorial? I don't even, like, a comedic editorial video. I know that makes sense as a genre. I'm trying to think of, like, what exactly is a video like that? What even is that? I think it probably sounds fun, but I'm sorry, I can't think of, like, an exact video to reference that's in that category. What are good beginning BDSM toys? Your hand. Not for choking, okay? Okay, not for choking. But I think if you are getting started in BDSM, it can be really tempting to, like, spend all the money and do all of the things and buy the big expensive flogger and buy the big expensive whip that looks powerful and cool and impressive and seems scary and fun. And I think that that's great. Find what makes you happy. However, I don't think you need to spend that much money to get started in BDSM. And until you really know what you like, I don't think you probably should, because most of that shit is not returnable. Also, we have a super chat from Andrew J. Brown. We played once, only really known her since last week, but I kind of want to see if she's open to collaring me. It's very soon, yeah, but I have feelings. Oh my gosh. Well, I will get to that. Andrew, thank you for the super chat. I will wrap up this thought about good beginning BDSM toys, and then we will get to your questions/thoughts. So, what I would recommend instead for beginner BDSM toys is I would think about things that you can use longer term in a relationship that are typically less expensive, right? I personally, let me see, do I have one near me? I do not. Okay, drat. I really like tenaguis, which are like a Japanese dish towel. You can find them on Amazon and like Daiso and like Asian dollar stores for really cheap. They're basically a really long, they're usually like used for kitchen stuff, and they're really, really good for both a gag and a blindfold. Those are awesome. Your bare hand, also a really good option as a beginning BDSM toy. For other toys to kind of start to explore with, and a collar and a leash is also a really good place to start. Again, it can be practical, it can be longer term, and tends to be a little bit less intimidating. I'd also recommend things for like sensation play, things like, like a metal back scratcher, maybe. Those can be really fun for sensation play. I would also you could look at sort of like cheaper floggers, but like honestly, I think sort of a beginner like impact play toy, I might look at like a leather paddle or like a wooden paddle if you like spanking and you want to go a step up from there. You can use belts. That obviously has a lot of psychological implications for a lot of people, so tread cautiously. And then if you do want to get more into sort of like thuddy sensation play, if that is more what you're going for, I would recommend like a sock filled with change. That's a really good way. It's actually kind of a fun scene, a little bit of a different energy to that, but I think that can be a really fun scene. It's definitely more on the thuddier side. A foam bat, that tends to be really popular with people. You can also use kitchen implements a lot, like wooden spoons, like kitchen spoons, or even like silicone spatulas and stuff as well. Just make sure that they're really properly well sanded and sealed, so that way you're not getting splinters everywhere, because if they're cheaper, they might not be as good. But yeah, that I think would be a really good way of kind of on the cheap exploring several different kind of elements of common BDSM play. I also think if you're more into bondage and stuff like that, cuffs or a simple length of rope can be a good way to start exploring. So yeah, pervertibles for sure. Love pervertibles. So let's talk about Andrew's little thing. So you only played once. It sounds like you had a really good time. That's awesome. I would really recommend, before you leap into asking that anyone collars you, you get to know them a little bit better. I'm sure you already know that. I know when you meet the right person and you have that like just connection with them and it works really well and you have a really, really good time with them, the temptation is to go, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Let's go all the way. I want to be with them, for a really long time. I want to do stuff with them. Let's go to that next level as soon as possible. Especially because you're going to be like mostly long distance, or like at least long distance for now. I would really recommend you take it slow. Start out, just, even getting to know each other as like actual people first, not necessarily, she's my mistress or master or daddy or what have you. Not necessarily just on that level, but also as people, to make sure your values are similar, make sure that you are, like, how do I say this? Just making sure that you are going to be being collared by the right person. You really don't want to get into a relationship and then find out partway through it, excuse me, that, or after you've been collared by somebody, that you have completely different values than, you actually thought you did. So I just really recommend taking the time to get to know someone outside of a BDSM context, as well as obviously inside a BDSM context. And I think that will help you make the right decision, and also kind of help you like pace the relationship a little bit and not just rush right to everything. Though again, like, I think it's really awesome you found somebody you connect with so well. I would really focus on the initial, communication, figuring out, okay, if we get to see each other again, what are we gonna do? Do we like the same food? Do we like the same movies? How do we feel about politics? How do we feel about this, that, and the other? Because, and well, for some people, you can kind of ignore that in a BDSM relationship. You can't always. It's something that, for certain people, they can kind of just have a BDSM relationship that is completely separate from everything else in their, they just have a dom and they do BDSM stuff together, and then romantically and in any other way they don't really have an intimate relationship. They don't really talk about anything like that. But I think for most people, you want to have more in common than just like, I like it when she beats me up or ties me up or whatever it is. So that is what I would keep in mind. And yeah, just good luck. I wish you the best. I think you're in for a really exciting time. I think, just remember to, sit back, smell the roses, enjoy the process. Don't always rush to get to the end and get to that final goal, because sometimes it's the journey that can be really fulfilling and not just the destination. Yes, if you guys spam emojis too much, Nightbot will flag you for emoji spam, because it's really common for spammers to do that. So just like FYI, just spamming emojis is not the way to get my attention. Oh, good point. Get collared with a consideration collar instead. It's like an engagement ring as opposed to wearing. Yeah, like you can wear a collar, but it can be like a training collar or a temporary collar or a consideration collar. You can definitely kind of start that initial phase, or just start by like, when you're video chatting with them, or you're playing a video game with them or something. That's when you have the collar on. And that's when you wear it. I actually think, personally, as someone that has had a relationship, both when I wore collars during particular times and also being collared 24/7, I actually personally find it to be maybe not more meaningful, but it can have more intention behind it to wear a collar only at certain times as opposed to 24/7. And I'll talk about that, but we do have a super chat. So thank you for all you do to educate and inform the worldwide community. Can't do the Patreon thing right now, but really appreciate all the videos. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate that. And I am very glad that YouTube is open and available for so many people around the world, because I know that I have an audience that's in Canada and Germany and the UK and Australia and Japan and all over. I think that's totally awesome, because unfortunately, I really feel like outside of the US and a couple other places, there's really not a lot of available kink education. So thank you. But for collaring and stuff, I feel like wearing a collar during just particular times, during scenes, when you're in service, when you are at a dungeon together, that has a very different feeling to it than when you're collared 24/7, because I think in a 24/7 relationship, it can be really easy to like forget the meaning of the collar and forget the intention of the collar, because it becomes so mundane, especially if you don't have like a really like high protocol relationship where it becomes very like casual and basically like you're living like a regular vanilla life essentially with your partner most of the time, I think it can kind of like, you know, lose its luster a little bit. Whereas when, and especially if you're long distance and you can't really interact with them that much, I get the desire to have something like always on you that reminds you of them, that reminds you of the relationship. So maybe the kind of issues with that would be a little bit less would be different. But I do think that when you are wearing something, and it's only when it's very intentional, and you have like a collaring sort of ritual you go through, and you have like maybe a mantra or a devotion or something you say to them before you receive the collar, I think that can kind of put this collar more in the space where you're elevating the headspace. Wow, we have 160 people watching right now. Thank you. Hi everyone. Glad you could be here. Thank you for listening to me ramble. So, okay, going back, let me go. I know I was scrolling past stuff. We were talking about choking. We were talking about so much stuff. Let me go back to that. Oh my God. I have missed so many. I'm so sorry. I've missed so many comments. We're back to the point where we were talking about 1763 closing. So, I've missed a lot. So if I missed your question, if you asked a question before that, please re-ask it. I will try my best to get to it. To Be His do really nice collars. I had one when I was owned. Yes, I have heard nothing but good things about their quality. So yes. I know you've mentioned some books you recommend on polyamory in the past, but I didn't see them listed in your book recommendations post. What are some good books if I'm looking to start my journey into poly? Okay, two thoughts. Let me check that because there should be, emphasis on the should, there should be in the FAQ a list to my recommendations for reading. I do have a separate list for BDSM books and for polyamory books. Although I'm not sure the last time I updated the poly one, and there have been some other books that have come out. So, okay, I do have a separate recommended reading list for polyamory. So let me put that in the chat. Bada bing, there you go. The ones from this one that I would start out with, I'm not sure if it's on here. I would recommend starting with something called, let me just put in for like my greatest hits list of my favorite. Something called Poly Secure. I'm gonna type it out because I don't know if it would make, yeah, okay, it is on there. Poly Secure, Building Open Relationships. That one's by Dr. Liz Powell. Opening Up. And then probably Love's Not Colorblind. Those are the three that I would probably, or the four rather, that I would probably start with. So yes. Those are the ones that I would recommend. Thank you. Okay, there we go. There's a super chat. Maybe that one just got delayed. I don't know. But thank you. Is the motorcycle getting ready to leave? Listen, I haven't heard the motorcycle yet today. You might get lucky. I don't know. But those ones are the ones I really like. I think it's going to give you a really good broad overview of a lot of different approaches to polyamory and open relationships in general if you want to explore that. I think a lot of poly books are very catered towards one very particular way of doing poly. And I think if you're just starting to explore into, okay, what do I want? What am I comfortable with? Do we even want to do poly at all? It's better to have a diverse set of like, here's all the possibilities, as opposed to like, if you try to do poly any other way, all of your relationships will fail and be unhappy. And that is how a lot of poly books come off. That's how, there's a couple I've read that are like that. More Than Two definitely comes off that way. A lot of the other ones that, I'm trying to, there's so many on this list, I can't think of some of the other, because if I don't like a book, I don't like actively try to remember it. Sex at Dawn, I think, is very also prescriptive about like, well, actually, people evolved to be like polyamorous, not monogamous. I don't think that's real. Evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, even. Disgusting. Don't like it. Yeah, so it's just, it's, you know, I don't want to, give anyone anything or recommend something that is too prescriptive before you really, you know, have a solid understanding of all the possibilities, because I think you can read those books still and get something out of them. But if you read that as your first impression, then you might just think it's the only like real option. And as we know from the way that I talk about BDSM, there are many possibilities out there. Not everything is just like, you can only do this. This is the only way. Everything else is bad. There are very few things that I think are absolutes in that way. The only absolute really that I have is informed consent. Emphasis on the informed. I am a little bit hardcore about the informed consent. But other than that, that's kind of just free game. You know, just don't do anything illegal or compel other people to do illegal things for you. That's pretty much, that's it. I think it's best to go with practical collars. Yeah, especially when you're first starting out with something, I do really recommend like something you can actually use for bondage, something you can use with a leash, something you get a little roughed up. But, you know, pretty collars are fun. Yeah, changing your personal behaviors, traits, characteristics, etc. outside of the conversation about consent and contracts is rude. Being submissive or a bottom doesn't mean that everyone rules. Yes, exactly. Like, yes, within a relationship, you can have a conversation about like, hey, like I've been thinking about this. I'd like it if like part of our relationship dynamic was like you help me develop these certain habits I'd like to have. Whereas, like, if you approach the conversation like, I mean, I might be willing to be your dom, but, like, you're definitely gonna have to lose some weight first. It's just, like, super gross. And I don't know if that's how the people actually said it, but I definitely know a lot of men that are very judgmental about, like, anyone who's even slightly chubby, and they just are like, she's too fat, I'm not attracted to her. And it's like, she's literally, like, a size 10. Please stop yourself. And also look in the mirror. Like, that's what I want to tell a lot of these guys is like, okay, well then, like, if you're such hot shit as a dom, then like, what are you bringing to the table? You have rock hard abs? Are you under 10% body fat? Are you a weightlifter? Do you run? Oh, you don't? Sorry, sweaty. You might want to like work on yourself a little bit first before you try to dom somebody else into like being your personal ideal weight. Maybe try to dom yourself into your personal ideal weight first before you do it to someone else. That's what I feel. Like, I don't, you know, I'm mostly being sassy, but, you know, I do find it particularly rich when a dom is like, listen, I don't have expectations for myself, but I'm gonna expect you to do this, that, and that, and have this perfect diet plan and lose this weight and be under a certain percentage of body fat and, you know, be this flexible and do this, that, and the other. And then, like, meanwhile, they just, like, sit and eat chips on a couch all day and, like, have never tracked a macro a day in their life and have never gone on a diet and, like, you know, are just, you know, they are holding other people to standards they don't hold themselves to. And, you know, I don't think for all areas of BDSM it makes sense to sort of, you know, oh, well, if a dom's doing it to a sub, they need to do it for themselves. But, like, unless you've gone through the rigor of losing a significant amount of weight, building a lot of muscle, sticking to a diet plan, like, I don't think you can really, like, be expected to actually, like, be a good dom to somebody trying to lose the weight, especially if you're the one who's initiating it and wanting it to be part of the relationship. Like, what are you doing? The same says men who can't differentiate when a woman / femme NB is wearing makeup versus not and saying it prefers a woman without makeup. Exactly. You know, it's the meme where it's like, it's the meme where it's like, you know, women without makeup. Oh my God, you look so sick. Are you okay? Is something wrong? Women with light natural makeup. Oh, that's just your bare skin. You look fine. And then heavy glam makeup. You look gross. Take all that off. Like, they don't even know. Like, I'm wearing makeup. Can you guys even tell what it is? Probably not. I'm wearing makeup right now. There's makeup in the room with us. Right there. The makeup is there. Yeah, it's just, oh God, the hypocrisy is real. So I have a negotiation with someone. I'm newer and I have a protective friend. Is it fine if I ask to bring her with me as a witness and feeling comfortable? So is this, so really quickly before I answer this, So are you bringing them to the negotiation to witness the negotiation, or are you bringing them to the play? Because personally, I think that you should, I would recommend meeting in public to negotiate with someone. Go to a coffee shop, go to a bookstore, go to a library or something, and negotiate with that person in public. Maybe have the friend pick you up and drop you off. Maybe have the friend be around in the area, like, oh, hey, I'm going to drop you off while you're here. I'm going to go across the street and, like, get a manicure. Have them close by if you want them there for, like, comfort. But I wouldn't have them be there for the negotiation, because people will act differently or change what they're going to negotiate for if they're under the pressure of somebody else being present. And I think the negotiation process is a really important time, because the negotiation process is a time for you to get more information about the person. How do they ask about things? How do they talk? How do they refer to stuff? What experience do they have? Are they pressuring you? Are they trying to guilt or coerce you? Are they trying to tell you a limit that you have shouldn't really be a limit? How do they actually behave during the negotiation? Because a negotiation is not a promise for play. It is simply a plan to talk about how play will happen if it is going to happen. And so I just wouldn't want to, like, modify any of that information, because if your friend is there and, like, watching over you during the negotiation, but they aren't there for the play, they might negotiate in a way that's not going to raise any red flags from your friend, and then during the play try to get away with more, and then use the excuse of, like, oh, well, I was embarrassed to talk about it because your friend was there, or I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to embarrass you, or whatever. So, your friend being protective is very great, but I just think that there's a way for them to be protective in a way that's, like, more helpful than, like, watching over your shoulder during a negotiation. It's a public dungeon, and that's where we will be the entire time anyways. I meet this person because of them. Okay, well, if it is at a public dungeon, then that, I think, I just really, if you're at a public dungeon, if there's DMs, I don't really think your friend needs to chaperone you, personally. I think it's probably okay for them to not supervise you. But if you met this person through them, like, I don't know, kind of, like, yeah, they're being a little bit possessive. I think you can debrief with them and talk to them about how the negotiation went, but I personally would feel uncomfortable if, like, one of my friends was trying to, like, watch over my negotiation. Unless for some reason you feel really nervous about it, or you're not really sure what to say. But even then, I think, if you're not prepared to do a negotiation on your own, you're not prepared to do a scene on your own. So that's sort of the mentality you have about it. But good luck. Hopefully my answer helped, and hope you have a fun time. All right, other questions. Oh, fuck. I thought we had 20 minutes. We have 8 minutes. God damn it. Okay. We're gonna answer some questions. All right. Where are we? Where are we going? We're talking about 1763. We're talking about people being weird and fat phobic. Remember, time is a friend of good relationships. I understand the fear of losing that connection, but patience will often bear fruit. That basically sounds like a fortune cookie, and I love it. That is very true. Taking time to establish a relationship, being friendly with each other, and just you going, not rushing, because you want to make sure you can hold on to that relationship with both hands is so important. Hey, no worries. We got plenty of mods in the chat. No pressure on anyone. I'm also technically a mod, so don't worry about it. Do you have any tips for meeting new people in the BDSM community when you are shy? Yes. I have a video, and I cannot remember the exact title of it, but it's something to the effect of tips for introverts getting into BDSM, or like, advice for, like, nervous or shy people or something. It involves the word, like, an introvert's guide or introvert something getting into BDSM. I always recommend... Oh, actually, I'll combine these questions, because the other one after this is, how do I help wifey get more comfortable with getting another partner involved? She's keen but super shy. Okay, we're so much about shyness. So for the first question about meeting new people, munches are great. I love munches. If you don't know what that is, it's a low stakes, either online or in-person meetup where it's not for play, it's not for hookups, it's not for meeting partners, it's just to be there for socializing. And yeah, so I'm sad to say that not all public dungeons are safe with or without DMs, especially when alcohol's allowed. I mean, I certainly think if you're negotiating in a dungeon and then and then playing in a dungeon, that is more safe than negotiating in public and then going to play in somebody's private home with somebody you've never met before. But yeah, I'm not saying that all dungeons are perfectly safe. I think if it's a dungeon with DMs, with an orientation, with a focus on education, and they don't allow alcohol or drugs or people that appear to be intoxicated to play there, that is going to be much safer than a dungeon where people are openly intoxicated and drinking. However, I still would always recommend going to a public dungeon to play with somebody than going to a stranger's private house to play with them after meeting them for the first time. Like, you can play in private at people's houses when you know them and you've met them and going, like, the number one thing that I always see for when people experience consent issues, violations, assault, they do happen at dungeons, but they happen infinitely more in private settings where no one else is around. And it's the place that typically the dominant or top partner who is being the violator is in control of. So, that's something to be cautious about. But getting into, it's called the Survival Guide for Introverts in BDSM. Yes, thank you. So I recommend going to Munches because they're low pressure. You have to remember the BDSM community is a cross-section of the general population. It really does go everywhere from 20-year-olds to 65-year-olds. There are lots of nerdy people in the kink community, lots of people that are shy, lots of people that are introverted. And I would just really, if you feel nervous about starting a conversation, there's a couple things you can do. One, I always recommend either on like stickers on your water bottle or something on your keychain or your lanyard or a t-shirt you're wearing, have some kind of like representation of like media that you like, right? Anime you like, TV shows that you like, Marvel or DC characters that you like, something that is related to something that somebody can start a conversation around, because it's a really good, easy way for, you see somebody wearing a Demon Slayer t-shirt. You go, oh my gosh, I love Demon Slayer. Are you excited for the new season? And then you can start a whole conversation. You can talk about anime. And we talk about BDSM, especially if that makes you nervous. And it's a good way to, also realize that people who do BDSM are like real people that have interests besides just BDSM. So I recommend that. I recommend talking to the event organizers before the actual event itself. Also, and this will vary, but some people find online meetups and like Discord chats to be easier than ones that are in person. So you might want to start with an online munch or joining a local Discord chat before you get into, actually going to an in-person munch. That way you get to know some names and faces and stuff before you actually go to the actual in-person munch. But talk to the event organizers. Say, hey, I'm new. I'm thinking about going to this event. Like, do you think this would be good for me as a new person? Like, if not, like, where do you recommend that I might go or try instead? And, what should I expect when I'm there? I always recommend going early, maybe even before the event technically starts if it's in public, because earlier on tends to be a little bit less crowded and a little bit less overwhelming. Whereas I think when you arrive, once people are already set up, I think that's more overwhelming to try and like feel like you have to break into a conversation or try and find a group of people to like stand next to. So I think going earlier is probably better. And always just remember, you don't have to be there for the whole time. If you get overwhelmed, if you feel like, oh, this isn't really for me, the vibe check fails, you can always just leave. You can come back later. You can hang out in your car and decompress. You can go to the bathroom and decompress. You can do whatever and then come back later. Or you can just leave and just don't come back. Listen to your gut. If it doesn't feel right, if people seem weird, if they seem aggressive, if you feel like people are trying to be up in your space and you'll be like, hey, you want to come back to my place or whatever? I've never heard of that happening, but just in case it does, you are always allowed to leave. And in fact, I would argue that most munches go on for long enough. They are designed for people to be able to leave sometimes, come back later, people who get off work at different times, people that work in the evenings and only stay for like an hour and then go to work. There's all kinds of things that can happen at a munch and all different things. So it really wouldn't be weird if you don't stay for the whole time and just Just focus on having fun. Don't feel pressure to be like, oh my God, I have to make this perfect first impression. Everyone's going to hate me. Like, people are not typically that judgmental. And just, yeah, just do what feels right. Maybe don't go to the huge munch that has like 200 people RSVP to it. Like, look for ones that are like, maybe 10 to 30 or so. Something like that. But yeah. All right, I have time for one more question. And then that's it. So, who will be the final question? I will quickly answer this. I don't really listen to audiobooks, so I don't have any recommendations for nonfiction or instructional BDSM books that are made into audiobooks, but most of the links in my book list either go to Goodreads or to Amazon, and so they should show you if there's an audiobook version. Okay, so last question is from Dion. How do I help my wife, or wifey, get more comfortable with the idea of getting a third person involved, as she's considering but very shy with her extra body? Does your wife have two bodies? I don't know what that means. Like, she's okay, but whatever reason, she's not comfortable with her body. So I think number one, you always are gonna have to go at the pace of the slowest person. And I think your wife has to really evaluate, is she doing this because she wants to do it? Or is she only doing it because she thinks it will make you happy? She could just be saying, oh, I'm shy, I'm insecure about my body. And that might just be the surface level. She might feel a lot of, fear of being replaced, of being compared unfavorably with the third person. She might feel possessive and jealous and maybe not wanting to share her partner. She might feel like she's being expected to perform and feel like performance anxiety around that. She might worry the other person's going to be better at sex than her. She might be worried that you're secretly looking to find a new spouse or something, like that you're doing it because you're unhappy with the relationships. You have to really trust, really trust that your partner is being honest with you when they say they are doing something because they want to do it. And the only reason I just feel uncomfortable because it's about my body. Unfortunately, there are a lot of horror stories with threesomes going very wrong because one or more than one of the partners involved has a really big, unexpected, negative emotional reaction and can't handle it and is dealing with a lot of jealousy, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of possessiveness, a lot of fear of being replaced, a fear of inadequacy, and it's especially if you haven't had a threesome before. It is very hard to suddenly expand how to have sex, not just with one person, but with two people, and make sure you're, who's the one who gets cummed in? What hole is it? Are you just jizzing off the side of the bed? Like, I'm being kind of crass, but to be frank, that's part of the considerations is like, there's all kinds of power dynamics at play that people are going to perceive differently when it comes to having sex with multiple partners. Like, where does the cum go? Who is getting paid the most physical attention to? Is one person being dominant over the other person? Are both people being dominant over one person? How are the two other people, like your wife and the third party, how are they interacting? There's so many things to consider that I think you're really going to have to drill down and go beyond just like, how do I help her feel more comfortable with her body? Because it's typically much more than that, especially if you don't have an open relationship in any other way. So true, Evie. I was on the other side of this. I was not the not wifey. She wasn't confident enough despite everything being out in the open with all three of us. Yes. And her having a lack of like self-esteem or confidence. So, like, if it's, you might be able to do it once or twice, but very oftentimes the vibes are going to be off, And it's one thing if it's like you're just doing it as a service and they're, or they're just doing it as a service and they're doing it in a way where they're not really interacting with each other. It's very clearly just for you and they're both paying attention to you and maybe she doesn't ever interact with or even like look at the other person. But that's probably not the fun time that you're looking for. I don't know what their orientation is. I don't know if they'd be interested in interacting with the other third party, but I think you have to be very, very clear and honest with her about what your intentions are, what you're looking for. You know, like, do you want to segue this into having a relationship with this third person? Do you want them to be a regular part of your marriage? Do you want to have threesomes on a regular basis or not? Are you going to play it by ear? Is this, no, I just want to have this novel experience to try it. I don't want to be emotionally connected. I only ever want to, you know, basically use them for sex, and then, like, that's it. But also, even if you guys decide you're both comfortable with this, finding a random third partner that wants to be completely emotionally detached and is willing to basically be like a sex surrogate for your relationship is not very common or easy to do. So there's like multiple really big hurdles here. But yeah. Full-on relationship with them both, lived there in their house, then figured out she wasn't confident at all. Yeah. It stretches until its breaking point. You know, it stretches until its breaking point, and sometimes it works out fine, and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm happy that the topics are relatable. But yeah, threesomes are a really common issue. A lot of people, especially a lot of men, really want to do threesomes. They really want to have a more open sexual relationship because they just want different pussy. They like let's be honest. They want different pussy. They want to do different sex things their wife won't do with them, and they want to have they want the experience of trying something new. Oftentimes, that's totally valid. I'm asexual, so I'm kind of speaking about it in a flippant way because, like, in my life, what's exciting is like making candles. So like I just think this is a like completely different axis of like what I don't really prioritize my life around like a 10-minute long activity of like two genitals sliding together. Like that's not really my thing, but yeah. Yeah, for sure. I know we're going to have to wrap it up soon, and I'm glad that you guys are enjoying the stream, but I just want to make sure I kind of finish my thoughts on this, like, navigating a threesome type deal. Because threesomes aren't even really necessarily BDSM, but they are, again, they're very common fantasy. A lot of guys especially into them. A lot of women really like them, especially as it feels like kind of a safer way of getting to sexually interact with another woman, right? Or a gender diverse person, as that paper we were talking about earlier said. What if my wife is not into non-vanilla lifestyle? Well, if your wife is not into non-vanilla lifestyle, then probably don't do BDSM with them. And also, like, I can't think of literally anything more fucking vanilla than a threesome. Like, a threesome is like the most vanilla alternative sex activity there possibly is. There's nothing in it that's like implicitly kinky or even like really, I don't even think, like, this is the thing, I don't even really think threesomes are like subversive or deviant or anything, because usually what it ends up being is like, it ends up, let's be honest, it ends up being like usually very penis pleasure centric sex with an extra pussy involved. Like, that's most of the time what it ends up being. It's either for the man's pleasure of seeing two women interact, it's for the couple's pleasure of getting a third person to do something, or it's about the man's ego of being able to have sex with two women at the same time, or it's about just like, oh my god, two women sucking my penis at once, that's so awesome, I'm so cool, and then they just, and then that's the activity. So it tends to be extremely heterosexual. It tends to be very much following the same sexual scripts as what happens in non-threesome sex activities, but it just happens to involve one more person. You can do threesomes in a way that are more kinky and involve more BDSM, but I don't think there's anything implicit in there. I don't have any time for any more questions, okay? I'm sorry, I'm out of time. I have to go make dinner, or I have to go find my dog, figure out what she's doing in the house, if she's, you know, dug a hole into the other neighbor's backyard. I don't have time for more questions. I am asexual. I do have sex because I'm not sex repulsed, and I do sexy things because my partners like it, and it's very hard to date other asexual people because we're like less than 1% of the population. So, whoops, sorry. Especially if I'm also trying to find a different kinky asexual, we're like, was it probably like 0.2% of the population, and that's for all genders. So really the genders I would want to have a relationship with. So it ends up being like, okay, my dating pool is this big, so I have sex as part of a relationship sometimes, but I have a very different relationship to it compared to other non-ace people that have sex. So there's that. I have tons and tons and tons of videos Don't worry. They're out there. Go. I have an asexual playlist. I have a BDSM 101 playlist. We got all kinds of stuff. All right, that is going to be it for this stream tonight, guys. Thank you so much for being here. As a reminder, again, tomorrow on Patreon, we are doing a live stream. We are going to be watching the submission mini-series. We're going to marathon the whole thing. It's going to be probably about 3-4 hours of juicy, juicy content starting at noon tomorrow. That's what we're going to be doing. It should be a really fun time. Any tier, any dollar level you want to sign up, it's patreon.com/evlupine. The Nightbot has been linking it during the chat, and also it is in the description box down below. As always, I'm so excited for that tomorrow. I think it's going to be a really fun time. I hope to see you there. If not, have a great rest of your Friday or a great rest of your weekend. Stay safe, guys, and I will see you